It's a video about carburetors and coffee cups and carbon choke cleaner and air filters and the Maxwell houses and carburetors.
Hey, it's James from AllHailInternalCombustion. We're getting back to our project, our Doodlebug project. We're going to work on our nice new workbench. We got a nice professional setting to take care of this carburetor. So I took this off a while ago, and it was like this when I pulled it off, because I pulled it off and put it right in one of our bolt organizers at its own bin. But this is the throttle, and it's completely seized, stuck. Oh, I mean, it moves, but it should move freely. So I'm going to take this thing apart and see what's going on. Now this is just the drain. I usually pull these out just to make sure we can clean that bowl out real good as I pull this stuff off into the gasoline.
That's not coffee. That's coffee.
Alright, so these type are bowl and bolt in the bottom. Pull that off, see that. That's not super dirty. There's an O-ring in here. Looks pretty flat. But that should only really come into effect. It's not really too dirty in there. May actually look like I pulled this apart and cleaned it before. So, ooh, that pin don't want to move though. So, take our flat head here. I'm going to set this down so that we're supporting the pin there, just in case it is kind of locked up. And it is. We're going to hit this with some carbon choke. Might just need to be wet up a little bit. Still pretty tight, so we're going to go ahead and just push it the rest of the way out. Alright, let me grab a pair of pliers.
Down on the floor. Back there.
Oh, they're wire cutters.
Same thing, only different.
Alright, so gasoline. That's not a good sign when your float doesn't pull off after that. Looks like the water in there, and it floats. So here's your needle. There's a spring on there, so remember that was on there. And this, I guess, probably wouldn't have a spring plunger in it because it's, you know, built into the top there. And then there's our actual needle. It looks like it's in fairly good shape too, but needs to be cleaned. And now we're looking at this. Alright. I have a small jet I can pull out of there. And this seat definitely needs to be cleaned, I guarantee that. Oh, normally this gasket is crispy. But if we want to test this carburetor while everything's still on here, because we might need to buy a whole new carburetor, I'm going to leave this gasket on there. That's our best chance. If I pull that out, it's going to break. So I'm going to leave it in there just so when we get the carburetor clean, we can test it instead of having to worry about finding a bowl gasket for this, and then we need a new carburetor anyway. So I'll tell you, instead, I have to get a screwdriver to fit down in there. I don't have a Phillips quite small enough. Here, I can just walk over to the box, but I'm going to go ahead and pull the Petcock apart. There we go. It looks like someone's had this apart as well. You can tell that the screw heads are a little shaven up. To tell you the truth, it must not have been me that took it apart, because I don't think I've ever taken a carburetor apart with a built-in Petcock. Alright. So as you can see, this is a pretty simple thing going on in here. But that's pretty dirty. Clean all that up as well. Looks like that's working good. So, yeah, let me go over and get a flathead screwdriver so we can take that out. Here, we'll go ahead and take this. This looks like an idle mixture screw, maybe. It looks like if I pull that out, it allows me to maybe take this thing out, which might give you some better access to cleaning the carburetor out, and it sure does. That's a passage, you know, whatever that goes to, it's important, so might be part of that idle circuit maybe. So the choke seems to work pretty smoothly. We just got to try to unseize this up. Probably squirt it with some carbon choke and see if that frees it up, or we could drop this whole unit right here in the gas lane. I think this plastic should be alright in the gas, don't you think?
We'll find out. Oh.
So we'll let that sit. Let me go get a small flathead screwdriver.
Just threw that in there without even questioning it twice, didn't we? See what kind of fine plastic that's made out of, and won't we?
So we ended up finding a screwdriver with the removable tips that has just the right size, because you can't go too wide and you can't go too small. So that was the issue we had, but we got the seat out, cleaned it out. So it's pushing air through, and I sprayed carbon choke through it. The seat for the pin, the needle, doesn't appear to come out. Sometimes they have O-rings in them. It's hard to tell sometimes. So instead of messing with that, I took carbon choke cleaner and blew through both of these holes to make sure that fuel would be able to make it in. And here, I'll just show you guys. Well, so I went inside the sprays inside the next hole. Plenty of fuel coming through there. So our needle seat is doing all right. Now I took the inside jet off of there. That's seat clear through. I'm going to blow into here. It appears that fuel is making it through the carburetor. I think the main issue we had with this carburetor when we went to use it is that this was not loose enough. So it wasn't getting any air. The carburetor may have been working if it would have been able to pull air through it. So we just kind of been soaking and cleaning this thing up and hope that we can loosen that grime up around this throttle blade here and shaft, that it moves freely. It feels like it is, but when you close it all the way, it gets stuck. So, you know, while it's on the bike, it might end up closing off because of vibration or something. It shouldn't, because it has an arm that goes to the motor that holds the throttle open just enough, and depends on what the signal is coming from the car or the motor, opens and closes the carburetor. So, just getting all that grime and grunge off of there. These are chip brushes. I think we bought a box of these for like $10 to $15 at Harbor Freight. Cheaper than going to the auto parts store, that's for sure, or even Lowe's or Home Depot. Harbor Freight, and you know, these probably aren't great for painting or anything, although we have done some painting with them. They're not bad. The gasoline seems to it's just not pushing through there hard enough. But we got this passage up here. That's coming out of somewhere. So carbon choke cleaner sometimes actually works a little bit better for busting grime and grunge off of stuff. Yep, that's it. Glad I wear glasses. Alright. Yeah, that's our bar now. It talks. Anyway. So yeah, we got this cleaned out pretty good. We just got to keep exercising this. I think it's freed up some, but what I might try to do is get a straw filled with Marvel Mystery Oil and drop some down into the arm, and probably coat all this in Marvel Mystery Oil inside, and we'll go ahead and reassemble this carburetor. I mean, that's as smooth as we're going to get the throttle, I think, to work. It's pretty easy. So, and you know what? I just thought about this. It may not get closed all the way for a reason, because this throttle mixture screw is supposed to go in here, and that might hold it out just enough that it doesn't actually lock itself closed. So we'll be sure when we set that we set a nice consistent gap. Because yeah, if you look through the carburetor here, you can see there's a little bit of air coming through the blade, and that's about where the throttle stop screw is going to push on the throttle. So I think this carburetor will be good. We got it loosened up. All the passages seem good. Say let me grab a bottle of Marvel Mystery Oil. That's the full one. Got a little Pringles cup here. Get some Marvel Mystery Oil and just drop it right down in that, right where that shaft goes into the body of the carburetor. That will kind of penetrate in there, but you know that Marvel Mystery Oil is good with gasoline. It's, you know, whatever, it won't, we'll just say it's combustible. I found that Marvel Mystery Oil really keeps stuff cleaned up, at least for a little while. Kind of keeps stuff oiled up even in a gasoline situation. So you don't need a bunch of extra, but if I just paint all this, I pulled my carburetors apart on my motorcycle, on my Honda, and I used Marvel Mystery Oil about I'll say a season of riding, and I pulled it apart. My carburetors were immaculate. Now, I rode the bike a good bit, so that might have something to do with it, but I'm just going to go ahead and coat the whole outside of Marvel Mystery Oil. Ain't going to hurt nothing. Might just be a little oily, that's all. Maybe it'll keep it from getting chalky. Going to wipe the excess off. Alright. Now, also a lot of people say to use this Marvel Mystery Oil as an assembly lube for your carburetor. I think that actually works pretty well. So, we can go ahead and assemble this Petcock first. Dip that gasket in our Marvel Mystery Oil. There's 2 bigger holes, 2 smaller holes. You set that down in there, just like that. And then there was a spring washer for this. It must still be in here in the gasoline. Yeah, there's a little spring. Is that it right there? No, that's a lock washer. Oh boy, I hope I didn't lose a part already. Let's see here. Yeah, it was a little washer went on here. I think it was metal. It's probably in here, I would imagine. Oh, here it is. Stuck to the end of a magnetic screwdriver. Alright. So this little ring goes here. See, it's a wobbly spring mechanism. So, drop that into place. Put our Petcock on. Petcock cover. 2 screws. Everything down inside that's sealing up or whatever is all covered in Marvel Mystery Oil. So I didn't coat the plastic handle on the top side and everything with Marvel Mystery Oil, which I probably could have, but really concerned about with the stuff that seals fuel in. even. You don't want to tighten one side down too much. Okay, lever's working good. That's off. Well, that's strange. It seems that our Petcock isn't working. Just fuel all the time. But it's not leaking out of the Petcock area. Let's take it back apart and see what's going on. At the same time, if it's not leaking out of the Petcock area, it's really not an issue. You can always put an external switch on it. Let's see. Make sure we have it assembled correctly. It really only goes together one way. Maybe not. Maybe it does go this way. Where's the washer? There it is. I wonder if that's how it goes. I bet that is how it goes. Let's just hold this on here and see. That's one. That's yeah. So kind of makes sense that it would sit in there. So we decided that Petcock is probably malfunctioning. So we're gonna hope that it doesn't leak fuel out of it. Actually, I guess I could give that a little test here. Yeah, it looks like it's leaking out of there. Put my finger. Oh, I'm not gonna be able to. Let's use the needle. Let's stick the needle in. Close that off. Yep, leaking out through the Petcock assembly. So we're pretty much dead in the water with this carburetor because the Petcock assembly is malfunctioning. That means it's just going to leak fuel. But we could put it back together. We could see if it starts up and runs. And then if it runs and idles and the throttle works, then we know we just need a rebuild kit that comes with a new O-ring on the bottom, new Petcock rebuild. There's a chance we might not be able to find a rebuild kit and we might have to buy a whole new carburetor, but let's put it back together, see if we can get it fired up. So remember this pin went in the top. I think that has some, it doesn't have any O-rings on it, but we're gonna go ahead and drop it in there. And to be honest, it does look like it's very specific. There's a hole drilled through the center of that. Never seen a carburetor with this little plug in the top of it. So it goes in. See, it's got a flattened side off on there. So you just got to make sure you put it in there correctly. There's a passage that passes through this thing. So I'm going to make sure it's sitting nice and square in there. And then we're going to put our idle mixture screw in. And basically run this in until we hit the stop. And there we go. Check up with the light. I'm going to open it. Make sure that your choke's open. Don't do what I just did. Alright, and we're going to just set it to where the blade's just letting some light through. That should be good. We can adjust it up from there if it seems like it's not running correctly. So we have our needle. Actually, we're going to go ahead and put our jet back in. Marble mystery oil. Drop that guy back in. And when you go to screw these in, you want to go backwards until you hear the click. Just like that. This is a brass jet, pot metal carburetor. It's up in the air which threads would win, but let's not battle them against each other. So now we have that set back in. Let's get the needle set. Actually, on this carburetor, the needle gets set inside of here. So we're gonna dip the needle in marble. I noticed too with the needle, it's most important to put a little bit of a lubricant on there, because then you're keeping the you're keeping the needle from getting stuck in the seat. And sometimes when you clean it with gasoline and it doesn't get wet right away, sometimes they'll get a little stuck. You'll have to knock on the carburetor to get the needle to come out. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes when you go to put these pins in, they're tight on one side. Just flip it around or try to go into the other side first like this. They should slide right in there because the bowl cover, see how that one slid right in? The bowl cover should hold this in place. But see, this side's obviously a little tighter for a reason. So I got my pin through there nice. And it doesn't really look like there's an adjustment on this float. So we'll just, that looks pretty good. Blow through our Petcock here. It's coming out of the Petcock, but it's also coming out of down here. So, yeah. So there's our carburetor. Can put this cover back on. I would say that the drain should go back here. So it might have a better chance of, yeah, I need to clean that on the bench grinder. We need our O-rings down here for this too. I want to tell you that we may have taken this carburetor off this Doodlebug and said, oh my, this thing is pretty messed up. Let's throw it down here and we'll get a new one eventually. And that day didn't come until today. That we're now realizing that the carburetor is pretty messed up. I'll tell you though, the chopper, the mini chopper, has a similar carburetor that fits the flange. Although it is a much bigger carburetor, you know, I can't see anything wrong with putting a bigger carburetor on a smaller bike, other than you just have to check your oil every once in a while so you don't accidentally lock your motor up from thinning your oil out too much. So just because it runs doesn't mean it's running right. You have to check things. Check your spark plug after running it after a while. Make sure everything's happy. There's a carburetor. It's ready to go. Let's we'll find the mounting hardware. We'll pull the Doodlebug out and we'll get this mounted on the bike, see if it runs. Alright, so real quick, just wanted to go over, this is the carburetor off the mini chopper. It's basically the same design, but different, a little bit bigger of a carburetor. As you can see, it's just a little bit larger all the way around, but the flange is the same. So this is one we're going to go ahead and put on, try it out, see what happens. We'll show you once we get it mounted. So for some reason, they made these nuts a really weird size. We don't have them. We'll have to get new ones. But I want to test it, make sure we don't have to order a whole new carburetor before I waste my time. So I'm just going to hold it in place. I got the choke on, got a bottle with a gear oil nozzle on it. Fuel line, temporary. Hold it down. Kill switch is on. There's the throttle doesn't work, but I can control everything. Okay, well it won't run unless it's choked. Let's try that again. We're also freeing the chain up, so let me get some PB blaster. Spray that on the chain. The PB blaster, the all elusive PB blaster. It's always going missing. I don't know where it is. Isn't that something? I'm gonna buy like 6 more cans of it so that I can use all 6 of those cans.
Only got 29 cans in the basement.
Alright, so I guess I'm not PB blaster in that right now. I just don't want the chain to explode in my hand. But anyway, well, let's get this started back up.
get some nuts on the carburetor.
Yeah, well, I had it running, but I guess I'll just go get nuts for it, and then to find that the carburetor probably needs to be replaced anyway. So,
But we're going to need new nuts for the new carb anyway.
so until next time, I guess this short measly video on this crappy carburetor on this thing. It did sit outside for a while, so luckily it still starts. So I might just look for a new carburetor or see how much they are. We'll price them out, figure that out. Maybe we'll just order a new carb for this thing. So till next time, this is All Hail Internal Combustion. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.